Hi, this is Esther with Discover Your Origins. This is a Research with Me video, and we are returning to Margaret C Farley. This is a series of videos where we're trying to identify Margaret's parents. And if you haven't seen the previous videos, I'll put links in the description box below. Just to recap what we did in the last video, we looked at census records and we were trying to find Margaret C Farley in the 1850 and 1860 US Census to see if she is listed with her father. We didn't find that exactly, but we did find some census records for a James Farley in Gallatin County, Illinois. So let me go to my research log here. Because one thing I did not do in the video, I suggested that you do it, is to capture the records as you're going through, even if they don't seem like they're a good match. Because I was going through the records that looked like they could be matches and saying, oh, these don't look like matches after all. And that was a little bit of a mistake because James Farley, the records that we did find are actually going to be very useful. And I did find something, so I will show you. But here we go. Here is my research log. I've got my research objective up here just to remind me what we're looking for. And that is to identify the biological parents of Margaret C Farley. And we did, as part of our research plan, we'll just go back here and look, was this first one here, to find Margaret and James Farley in the 1850 and 1860 US Census. And so we did a lot of searching. We used Ancestry to help us. And as I looked at the records, what you should do is record that you looked at something in your research log and also create the source citations. And I also added a link here for the URL to take me directly to the record. Super useful to do that. And as I was doing it, after I finished recording the video, I started to see things and it got me really excited. So before I reveal everything, I am going to just highlight one record that in particular came up that was very useful. And so let me show you how I found it and then what that record told me. So I'm going to go down and I'll pull up one of these census records for James Farley. And I initially said this James Farley is not a match because it just didn't seem like it fit. So here's the link to the 1860 US Census for James Farley in White County, Illinois. And White County is next to Gallatin County, and the area where James Farley was living was called New Haven. And New Haven has just this tiny little bit that goes up into White County. So it's a little bit confusing when looking at the records. So here's that census record here on Ancestry. It's really helpful to do this kind of searching on Ancestry if you can, because you get suggested records. I won't do a deep dive in all of it, but as I was going through, there were some things that really stuck out to me. So there was some marriage index records for James Farley. So we're going to look at those in a little bit. There was this Civil War draft registration for James Farley, and the name is spelled differently, but phonetically it's the same, and it seems to be a match for that James Farley that's in Gallatin County. But it was this one right here, 1850 for James Turntine, and I was like, that's weird. Why would there be a record suggestion for James Farley with a different last name? So I went and looked at it. And okay, somebody has, another user has come in and said that James Turntine is actually James Farley. And you can look at the notes of what somebody said, of why they said that was the same. And the inferred parents for James was Reese Turntine and Indiana Turntine. That grabbed my attention because we found a Caroline Farley in the household of Reese Turntine and Indiana Turntine in 1860. So super interesting. And when I go and click on this, I'm going to have to block out the username here, but this person said, James Farley, rather than James Turntine, Indiana was married first in 1830 to Joseph Farley. Okay, so Reese Turntine would be a stepfather to James Farley. So if we come in here and look, and his mother's name then is Indiana, and there he is, James Turntine. And this last name Hubbard also shows up in other Farley things. There was a domestic servant named with the last name of Hubbard that was later living with James Farley. Could be a relative, actually. And so I searched up the public member tree for the person that submitted those notes to see what they said. And so on their tree, and I'll just create a little graphic here to put on the screen. They said that James Farley, who is the son of Indiana, first married a woman named Caroline Vine, and then later married a woman named Elvira, or Delilah Elvira Vaughn. And that just immediately made me think, okay, it's possible that James Farley was married before Delilah or Elvira and could have had some children. And that would then explain Caroline. And so I have the source for that here. There's a Caroline Farley, age 8, in the household of Risa and Indiana Turntine. Could this be Margaret Caroline Farley? Because we know that Margaret's middle initial is a C, living with her grandparents instead of her biological father. And so I'm just going to pull this up. This was on Family Search that I saw this census record. And I thought it was interesting because this Caroline Farley is the right age to be Margaret. It's a couple years off, but it seems to be a pretty good match other than the name. And also the fact that if Caroline is the granddaughter of Indiana, and this is actually Margaret, then we found Margaret in the 1860 US Census, and we've also connected her to her father, James Farley, with indirect evidence and through the relationship connections that we have through these census records. So it super gratifying to find this and to get those notes, suggestions to go and look further. And so I'm going to go to my project, my Google Drive document, and do a little bit of updating. A professional may not alter their research plan very much, but if this is a personal project, then feel free to go ahead and do that. But I'm going to modify a couple of things here and add some notes. So here is my future research. And I still have, some other things here that need to be discovered. And I'm going to say we need to research. So today's video, long story short, is to look for a marriage record. And I have here, find a marriage record for Lewis Riley Nelson and Margaret Farley. I'm going to add a couple other things here because I do want to find a marriage record for James Farley and Elvira. Margaret is probably not the daughter of Elvira, but could be the daughter of Caroline. So using the indirect evidence, and I haven't written up a proof argument or anything at this point, is probably the daughter of James, but now we need to identify the mother. And if we can figure out the marriage records, that will help us with that. Now, we have a bunch of marriage record collections up here, and they may or may not all be that useful to look at. I just wanted to collect them so I could look at them. But the one that I really want to look at is probably this Family Search one. Before I do that, though, let's jump over to Ancestry again because I did have a record hint for Margaret for a marriage record. I want to look at that first, and that will help guide us when we look at the other marriage record collection and Family Search. So on Ancestry, this is only an index. And so let's go and look at this. I want to look at this even closer. Let's go and look at the record page. And it is only index entry. So we can see here they're married in Gallatin County. Marriage date 12th of June 1870, which we noted overlapped when the 1870 US Census was taken. And let's look at the source here. So the original data is from the Illinois State Marriage Records Online Index. So we'll go to the actual page here. This gives us information about how we can actually retrieve the marriage record. So it says here, the Illinois State Archives, in conjunction with the Illinois State Genealogical Society, created the database. So they created the index. Marriage license copies can be obtained from the clerk's office where the marriage took place, in some cases through the Illinois Regional Archives Depository System. It's an ongoing project. So that may be helpful if we need to go to the Illinois State Archives to actually get this marriage record. The reason we want to get this marriage record is to see if it has her father's name on it. That would help provide evidence for that parent-child link, and even better if it has the name of her mother. Now, I don't know what these records actually look like and if they list parent information at all, but we're going to hope, right? There are some other collections here that we could look at. So let's go back to our research plan here, because we do have a link to the marriage record collection and on Family Search. So let's go. It looks like I do have a link to the statewide marriage index at the archives. All right, let's go to Family Search here. Let's just look at that index record again. We'll just back up over here and see how the names are spelled. Lewis R. Nelson. Okay, so let's look up Lewis R. Nelson in Gallatin, Illinois. Would have expected to see it. Okay, so that record collection is bust. They're not listed in it. Let's go back to that front page and just see what it says. Okay. All right, so we should create a citation for this record collection. And so I'm just going to go ahead and make a note, and then I'll complete the source citation later. So, okay, while we're here, let's look for James Farley. Okay, so that's a bust for James Farley as well. So we'll update that on our research log a little bit later. So we will cross that off as not having what we need. So the other record collections that we have here is we've got the Illinois Statewide Marriage Index. We've got Marriages That Find My Past. That is a paid subscription site. The usnewspapers.com Marriage Index. So we'll look at a couple of these, and then we'll see what we need to do next. I'm going to do the Illinois Statewide Marriage Index. Okay, so here we are on the Illinois State Marriage Index page. It does have the marriage information, and it does give you the volume number and page number of where that record is. So if we have to, we may need to have a lookup, contact the Illinois archive here, and see if we can't actually order a copy of the marriage certificate. And I do think it is worth doing just to have that record and see what's on it, if nothing else. So I am going to put that on our research log and make sure that we capture that. Okay, so I've got this in my research log. I'm also now going to put in my research plan here, future research. The person who suggests this will need to order a copy of the marriage record. Ordering from an archive like this may not be as expensive as you think. It really will depend on the state and the archive requirements. And so we could maybe look and see what we need to do here. Okay, this would be important if you do get a copy of this marriage record because there are abbreviations that may be used on the record. So you'll know what those mean. Okay, so here is how to obtain a copy of the marriage record and what you need to do. So it does not say if there's any fees. There probably will be. Marriage record searches are free, but a small copy fee will be billed for records. Uncertified copies only. So there will be a small fee, but probably if it's probably going to be less than $25, hopefully. You'll have to contact the county clerk to see for sure. But I'm going to put this link here in my future research so we can get back to that of how to do that. All right, so we looked at that one. Oh, we need to look for James Farley. So let's do another search. And let's look for James. And I want to see if there's one for James and Caroline. Okay, lots of James Farleys. Let's see how many results. Okay, that's all the results. So we want just Gallatin or White County. Okay, here is Elvira and James. 11/28, 1854. Okay, so we need to put that in our research log. Oh, and here's Caroline Vines and James Farley. So we need to put that in our research log. Some of the records for Margaret say she was born in 1852. Some say 1854 in June. That would still be before the marriage of James and Elvira. So pretty good chance then that her mother is Caroline Vine because James and Caroline were married in 1851. Elvira, they were married in November of 1854. So Margaret would have been a baby, a very young child, when that marriage happened. I'm going to take a minute here and record this information in my research log, and then we will come back and talk about what our next steps are. Okay, so one thing that I noticed in this index while we're looking at it is this says Elvina Robinson, and I think she may have been married previously to James Farley because from what I saw in Find a Grave, her last name is Vaughn. So that is also something that's going to need to be cleared up if we can see and find a marriage record for Elvira to be married previous to James Farley. So we'll put that on our future research. All right, that's pretty exciting. Now, there are some additional things we could search here. I'm going to do that off camera because this video is already getting long. And then if I do find anything, I'll update my research log. So what are the next steps? The next step in our research here is to look at death records. And so we're going to look at obituaries and see if we can't find some obituaries. And hopefully we'll have enough time in the next video to maybe look at one of these other things, perhaps these school records, to see if Margaret is listed in the school records. Because we're trying to find something that says Margaret is the daughter of James. Right now we're doing it through indirect evidence or inference in a way. I mean, her death certificate says she's the daughter of James Farley, but we want to try and find some other record that says that. And so that's what we're looking for. And then, so we may put looking for James Farley in the family search full text search in a future research because we're getting close to achieving our goal and our research objective at identifying biological parents, or at least some candidates for biological parents for Margaret, which is really exciting. And because we're getting close to that, I'm going to get to a point where I'm going to stop and hand this back to the person who suggested this so they can carry forward with the research and just firm up what we've done here. So if you want to see what happens next, because this is getting exciting, be sure to subscribe to get a notification of when I post my next video. And if you want to read more details, I'll have a link to the blog article that goes with this video in the description box below. I hope that was helpful. We'll see you next time.